Hi, guys. It's good to see you. Thanks for getting up and dressing up for me and showing up. It's really a nice, warm welcoming. My name is Brooke Weens. I am an associate pastor here at Crossroads. And excited to hang out with you today. If you heard me last time, I might have sounded a little similar. I'm not sick this time, but my allergies. Anybody getting attacked by their allergies? Yes, it is so not fun. I was born and raised in California, and I feel like all that smog just set me up for great success in life. I'm seeing some head nods. So, I'm just going to embrace that this is just the new sound of my voice. It could be different next time. But I'm so glad you guys are all here, excited to chat with you today. If you know from last time, it had been 10 years since I had spoken. Now it's been about a month, so I have no excuse today. So I expect on the back of the Connect card, just, give me an A, B, just let me know how it's going. I must have been okay because they let me come back again. We'll see how today goes. But as always, I have a question to ask you as we start off today. Have you guys ever heard someone say, this kind of passive-aggressive phase, have you ever heard someone say, that's different? Are you kind of like anxiously chuckling because you say that? I for sure have. I can think about moments where I just feel like stumped and I'm like, that's different. And like, what are we like really saying, right? Like if somebody is sharing an experience or I know when I was younger, I have an older brother, and I remember one day he decided to like bleach his hair. This was in the early 2000s, guys, come on. And it was like right before our family was gonna like go on a family cruise. Yep. And I just imagine like my mom there's probably a lot of thoughts in her mind, but that's different. I can imagine a lot of people are probably thinking that when this boy is bleached blonde hair. But what are we really saying? I don't like that. That makes me uncomfortable. Or maybe it's even something maybe a little bit more critical of like, that was the wrong decision. This is not a good thing. We're often implying when we say, that's different. There's a hesitation, even as I say it, right? There's this emotion that is produced. I don't like that. But we also somehow know that that's not socially acceptable to maybe say that in the moment, right? Like we know if someone like brings their newborn baby, we had a daughter 11 months ago. She's really cute though, so none of you had to say that. And you bring in, you're like, that's a baby, right? Like we know it's not socially acceptable to say, like, look at all the little old man wrinkles. Where's the hair? Whatever. We know that it's not acceptable. And so we've kind of created this phrase, that's different, to kind of imply, I'm being nice right now, but something about this is making me uncomfortable. Now, another question is, when you are in your everyday life, because, we don't just live in this building, and I know you guys have lives outside of this that are, I'm sure, very exhilarating, but in your everyday life, when you come in contact with someone or something that is different than you, I just want you to take a second to think, like, what is your initial reaction? Like initial reaction. You don't have to confess to anyone, so don't like make it up. I will confess. I will admit. I will be brave in this moment and admit that my initial reaction when I come in contact with something that is different is judgment. I see some head nods. And I'll be honest, sometimes it feels like habitual, like it's just this gut reaction to just like, I don't like that. Well, why are they dressing like that? Why are they talking that way? Why do they drive? There's this kind of, there must be a reason that there is I don't like this. There's a judgment that just kind of, I don't like it, if I'm being honest. I don't like that my initial reaction when something is different is kind of this criticism. And I feel like for a lot of us, it is kind of habitual, especially when we're looking at someone, I know that I can say this for me, when I'm coming in contact with someone who reminds me of somebody who's like hurt me, or maybe I've seen something on social media or in the news, and there's like a stereotype in my mind that I have. And then when I come in contact with a person like that, I just automatically kind of assume like, well, you must be like them too. And I won't confess what that is. But maybe, they have similar characteristics, and it just reminds me. And I feel like a lot of times when we are looking in our world, we see so much fear due to difference. There's your first fill in. I was on top of it. I even made fill-ins for this. You're welcome. Just kidding. But I feel like as we look in our world, we see so much fear due to difference. We come in contact with something or somebody that is different than us in such a variety of ways, and there is such a fear. And when I think about the last 10 years, I feel like this has just become more and more and more. We see such a conflict, a fear of difference when it comes to politics. Democrat, Republican, independent, whatever, automatically, if we know there is a fear, there is maybe it's a religion, right? Maybe it's Christian or Catholic or Muslim and Jewish or whatever it might be, right? If there is a difference and we sense that, there's automatically this fear and this othering that I feel like is just we're so conditioned to do it. Maybe it's gender, maybe it's race, maybe it's someone's nationality, or maybe where they're from. And we often can fall into this mindset that if something causes us to pause, whether that's a positive or a negative feeling, it must be bad or wrong. Like if something is different than us, I feel like it's kind of conditioned us to just think like that thing must be bad, we must other, danger, danger. And there's this idea that if it's different, then we have to change it. We have to fix it. I have to keep that thing at a distance. And unfortunately, what we see over and over again when this is the mindset of individuals, whether like explicitly, boldly, or subtly, is that this isolating, this othering, this forces a division that just breaks this sacred bond that God has created between all of us. There's such beauty in difference. I even notice that when I think of the word difference, I think of it as like a bad thing. Anybody else, when we think of like something's different, like, oh, like it's a bad thing? But there's such beauty in difference. There is a sacred bond between all of us as being creatures of God and in our differences. And when we are isolating and othering, it's just slowly breaking that apart. Now, I do want to say that there's a big difference. That there is a big difference between kind of this gut feeling that something feels unsafe, right? Like I think that there is at times, there is definitely a beauty in trusting something feels unsafe. A situation, that is a very different conversation than what I'm going to kind of create today in trusting your gut in that. But we're going to be looking at a story today in Scripture. We're in luck because othering people is not a new thing. We've been doing it for thousands of years. You guys are in luck. So we're going to be looking at a story today, and seeing what wisdom might there be in this. And I think what we're really going to be asking ourselves today is what is at stake? What is at stake for us if we continue down the path of othering? What is at stake for us if we continue thinking about difference as bad? If we fail to honor differences, maybe that's sexual orientation, gender identity, race, ability, goes on and on. We're shrinking this image of God. If we fail to honor it, acknowledge it, recognize it, see it, engage with it, we're shrinking the image of God into something that looks just like us, just like you. Enter yourself, your identity in a box. There is danger for whoever you are, however you identify, whatever you look like. into thinking that anything outside of that is wrong or bad, where we're shrinking this image down into something so small, and we're truly limiting ourselves and others in participating in the peacemaking path of Christ. And so let's look at this story. Today we're going to be looking at a story in Joshua chapter 2. In the book of Joshua, Moses has recently died. He was quite an icon, and he had recently died. Joshua had kind of taken over. Anybody ever watch the movie Prince of Egypt? Anyone? Oh, some people got excited. Well, now that's your assignment. Sermon done. That was not enough hands. You guys, we're just going to pause. Cut. Can you please put the movie on? All right. Well, that was supposed to be helpful to understand some things here, but I guess I'll explain instead. So yes, the children of Israel have left Egypt. They're wandering the wilderness. Moses has died. Joshua has taken over. And they've come into this moment where there's a really big city in front of them that is in their way to get to the promised land. And that city is Jericho. All right, what about VeggieTales? VeggieTales? Oh, that's what it was, not the Prince of Egypt. All right. Got it. VeggieTales. Do we know VeggieTales? You know, got to walk around. Jericho falls down. Cool. So we're going to be looking at a story kind of within that story of Jericho, of a woman named Rahab. Now, she truly has quite the introduction. Let's just kind of read it together in Joshua chapter 2, verse 1. It says, "And Joshua, the son of Nun, sent 2 men secretly from Shittim as spies, saying, 'Go view the land, especially Jericho.' And they came into the house of a prostitute whose name was Rahab and lodged there." What a way to be introduced. What a way. You know, in 2025, we really believe in person-first terminology. Person-first terminology is identifying the person first, she, her, Brooke, before whatever we're going to identify them as. At the time of the Old Testament writers, all that they really cared about was that there was a prostitute whose name was Rahab. To them, this was her identity, period. To them, this is what made her different. This was what set her apart from the Israel people. And they, as soon as the Bible writers at this time wrote about her, they needed to make it known, just so you guys know, she was a prostitute. Now, Rahab is introduced in Joshua chapter 2 with labels, right? This label, prostitute, which would have immediately marked her as outside, unworthy of pretty much like every religious and cultural standard of the time. This was like the one word that you did not want before your name, because it automatically kind of just bottom of the totem pole is what they are saying. They give us a few other insights into who Rahab was. Rahab was a Canaanite, which was a member of a group that Israel was at war with. They were an enemy of. Israel, Canaanites, they were not friends. They were trying to destroy Jericho. They were not trying to move in and start a friendship there. It tells us that Rahab was a sex worker, which automatically stigmatized, dismissed, othered difference. Now, I just want to say this one thing. I'm going to step on my soapbox for a moment, so just enjoy. Being a sex worker was not like a choice. At the time, it was incredibly patriarchal, and for a single individual woman, if you were not married, you were pretty much useless to society. And what often happened, even outside of being a choice, is that these individuals were often forced to enter into a prostitution lifestyle. Like, they were being prostituted. It was not like, well, I guess I have to do this. They were almost, women at that time, especially if they were single, widowed, they were completely dependent on men. And historically speaking, she was being prostituted. And, you know, I think that in a way, Jericho being destroyed for her was like a huge opportunity for liberation, for freedom. Here she is stuck within this city. It tells us that her house was kind of on the outskirts of town where she, did her business. And so in her mind, The potential for this place being destroyed was liberating. She was ready for freedom for herself and for other people. You know, at this time, women were just viewed as property. They were very much background figures, but we're going to see today that Rahab in this story and in a larger scale played so much more than that. Rahab is someone who Israel, and truthfully myself, maybe some of you today would be tempted to other, to look at, to judge, to just assume, ... She was different. She was different. She didn't reflect the right kind of image. I don't want my kids around her. Someone that was really easy to just write off. Now, the story continues in Joshua chapter 2, kind of 2 going into 8. These Jericho spies, or these Israelite spies, they enter into Jericho. They go to Rahab's house. They somehow knew that was the place to be. And word reaches the king. Word reaches the king that Rahab is housing these spies. And as you can imagine, the king of this place was not happy that there were spies in his land. And so the king sends messengers to Rahab, demanding that she hands them over. Ooh, I love her response. She doesn't give in to the patriarchy. She hides the spies on her roof under like a bundle of flax, and she then misleads the king's men, saying to them, oh, they've already left. I don't know where those spies are. And she urges them to leave Jericho to go pursue those spies. Just utmost defiance in the most beautiful sense. Love to see an empowered woman. And the soldiers, they leave. They go to her house. The spies aren't there. They hear what Rahab says. She must have been really convincing because they believed her and they left. And then she goes back out to the roof where the spies are hidden. I love that Rahab is not passive. She takes initiative. She's not passive in this experience. I'm sure she was very aware of her place in society. I can't imagine for her she was ignorant of how people talked about her. And yet, when it came to a moment, she wasn't passive. She takes initiative. She hides the spies. She devises a cover story and then sends the kings on a false trail. I just love how this passage so far is just highlighting how Rahab, she was such a quick thinker. Like in the moment, if someone came to my door, I'm not a good liar. I'd be like, I don't know where they went. They're on I don't know. No. But for her, no. I can imagine that there was this, she kind of had to learn how to play the game to protect her identity and safety, I can imagine. She was quick thinking, and she was incredibly brave. She knew that she was different. She knew that, socially speaking, she was already at the bottom. And here comes men from the king who are approaching her because she has spies in her house. But instead, she chooses to protect the spies. Outsiders, enemies to her, but for some reason, she's seeing a bigger picture here, and she protects them, and she's demonstrating not loyalty to her own king, but she's demonstrating loyalty to something bigger here, and we're going to see what that is. So it continues in verse 9, and verse 9 is kind of like her moment in this chapter. She's having a conversation with the spies on the roof, and she says to them, I know that the Lord has given you this land. She is immediately speaking with confidence and faith and belief in something so much bigger than herself. And it's interesting that she is talking to the spies of the Israel people, and she's telling them, hey, believe, have faith. You're going to get to that promised land. I know. Here she is as a sex worker, a Canaanite, a woman, and yet she's able to stand there in the dignity that she has within herself and says, I know that the Lord has given you this land. She has deep faith, and might I even say deeper faith than the Israelite spies. You know, she had a deep belief and felt courageous enough to share that with the spies. She really had no reason to, right? She could have kept quiet and said, the men are gone, be on your way, but she felt the need to share that with them. I just love that she didn't let her difference keep her quiet. She didn't let her difference keep her quiet. And then it didn't stop there for brave and courageous Rahab. I'm going to give her new titles. She then is bold enough to ask these spies, hey, do you think that you could also save my family? She's not just thinking about herself and her own survival and her own liberation from this place that has kept her enslaved. She is brave and she is asking for the safety of her family. She knows why the spies are there. She knows that this place that she calls home is going to be destroyed, that is their purpose, their intent. There are thousands of Israelites wandering the wilderness. Jericho is in their way. She knows. But yet she asks. And crazy enough, I don't know why. If you have an answer, let me know. The spies, they had kind of every right in this moment too, right? To other her, to say, hey, thanks for helping us out. See ya, we don't owe you anything. But the spies, they agreed with her and they made a covenant with her. They made a covenant with her to keep her family safe. A sex worker, a woman, a Canaanite. This was completely unheard of. There was no reason for them to do this, and yet they did. And truthfully, I don't know why, but I just find so much beauty in the fact that they did. That instead of looking at this woman who had saved them, I mean, if the king's men would have gotten them, they would have been put to death. And they made this covenant with her. And the way in which Rahab was able to kind of signify to them, hey, this is my home, keep it safe, was through a scarlet cord or a scarlet rope. So Rahab hangs this scarlet rope from her window as a sign to the outside world, to the Israelites without the city, that her place was a place of refuge, defiance, and faith. She puts this scarlet cord out her window to say, we are safe in here. And we're going to kind of spend the rest of our time together talking about that. I think that it's incredibly important on June 1st in light of some things that have happened. And from this scarlet cord that she puts out, her family was safe. We know as we look later on in Joshua, I believe it's like Joshua chapter 6, when Jericho is indeed destroyed, that Rahab's home is safe and her family is safe. Her scarlet cord rope outside of her window provided safety. And this is just so cool to me, that in Matthew chapter 1, in the very beginning of the book of Matthew's in the New Testament, it starts by telling us the lineage of Jesus. In the Old Testament times, they were really obsessed with this. There's all these like entire chapters in the Bible where they're like, and she begot, and he begot, and they begot, and we begot, and it's just like 20 verses of that. I don't know why. But in this instance, I actually was interested. I usually skip those over. Anybody else? It's just, I don't, there's enough going on. But in this instance, I love in Matthew chapter 1, verse 5, it says, and Salmon, pause. Why was his name Salmon? It's not salmon, by the way, it's Salmon. I don't know, unique. And Salmon, the father of Boaz by Rahab. So this is a verse in Matthew chapter 1 that is lining out the lineage of Jesus. It's like building up to let us know all of Jesus's uncles and aunties and grandmas and grandpas. And what do you know? In verse 5, Rahab is in there. And in ancient genealogies, when they listed all of this stuff out, they like rarely mentioned women, which doesn't make any sense to me, because there wouldn't be, anyways. Not going to get on that soapbox. But in ancient genealogies, they would never list women, and especially not a sex worker, a Canaanite, especially not someone like this. And yet, here she is. Rahab. Rahab is in there. You know, Rahab didn't just help the people of God, but she actually became, in a very literal, physical sense, the people of God. And more than that, she became a part of Jesus himself. That's just so beautiful to me. In the midst of such messiness and difference and othering and hatred and anger and labeling, she finds herself named as a literal part, as a literal relative of Jesus himself. And the crazy thing is, she never knew it. She never knew that. Rahab was long gone by the time that Jesus was here. So I don't want you to miss this. Difference, this word, this phrase, this title, this label, this thing that we interact with, maybe passively use. Difference does not bar you from God's story. Maybe it's your own difference that you perceive in yourself, or it's maybe the way that you perceive the difference of other people. It does not bar you from God's story. In fact, what we see from this incredible and empowering story of Rahab is that it places you a lot of times in the center of it. It places you. The people, the Israelites, would not have been able to destroy and to make it through Jericho into the promised land, into so much more of their history and story if it was not for this sex worker, this woman, this brave individual. You know, they would have missed what God was doing. They would have missed the victory. And I think that we risk the same thing today. If we see people that are different as wrong or outside of ourselves, then we're just distorting the image of God. We're shrinking it. We're turning it into something that is just too simple. And Rahab's story, it reminds us a couple of things. Rahab's story, it reminds us of a couple of things that I don't want us to forget this morning. It reminds us that God's image often shows up in unexpected bodies, that God's purposes are often advanced by people we are taught to judge or mistrust, that God's purpose often moves forward by individuals, by communities, by people that society as a whole loves to other. God's story often includes the outsider. If we look at a lot of stories, or maybe we can think of even examples today where God has really moved and changed and brought about peace, that the outsiders are not just a footnote. In this story, Rahab is not a footnote. She is the main character. She is the key figure in this story, this woman. And lastly, God isn't looking for perfect credentials, but he's looking for that courageous heart. You know, Rahab just made herself available. She was there, she was available, and she was so brave. And that is truly the heart of it. When we distort or we dismiss the image of God in other people, we don't just harm them, do we? Yes. I don't want to minimize that. When we write off other people, we're absolutely harming them, but we're honestly doing so much more for us and the fuller picture of God's image. We're blocking ourselves from seeing something so much more. So then the question is, how can I live this in my everyday normal life? We talked about this scarlet cord, and I want to come back to that. But first, practically speaking, I think that a very practical way to challenge this difference, this othering in other people, is to first pause, check yourself, and to listen. To listen intentionally to people whose stories are different from yours, especially those that have been marginalized. And unfortunately, today, that's not hard to find. To listen, learn, observe, open with just from an objective place. No judgment, no criticism, no othering, no I'm better, no that's wrong, I don't like that. Just to listen intentionally to people whose stories are different from your own. And that's going to be different for every person because we're all different in this room. You know, Rahab's home, it became a place of safety and protection. In this story of Jericho, her scarlet cord or rope hanging outside of her window was such a visual representation to other people that they are safe and protected, that they are safe with and protected from judgment when they were within her home. And the hope is that in your everyday normal life, that this can be the case for you as well. That wherever you are, wherever you have put down roots, your work, your homes, your communities, your families, that people know that they are safe and protected from you. So then the question is, how can you put out, in a real sense, how can you put out your scarlet cord? How can you put out that rope to be visible? You know, our church is really trying to do that right now. How many of you saw as you drove in that big sign out front? Love louder. Yes. I agree. That's our church's scarlet cord. That is a way for us to say you are safe here. And it's not really surprising to me that this last week someone decided that shouldn't be up anymore. I don't know if any of you guys saw on our social media or saw or heard, but somebody let the anger or I don't even know what you call it, get the better of them and decided that they needed to remove that. And that it didn't need to be up anymore, and that sign was not in the right place. And so they destroyed it. They destroyed it this last week. Two of them, not all of them. And so then what was our response? Well, we decided we're going to keep putting them up because we want people always to know that love is louder, that they are safe here. And it's interesting because it kind of got like national recognition. Like we kind of posted online just to like make kind of this formal statement, we love you, we forgive you, and we're going to keep loving loudly here. And people started chiming in. People started sending in messages, other churches, people across the country, people that have been so hurt by the church and othered and outcasted said, if I lived there, if I was there, I would want to go to a place like that. And, you know, that's not, like, we're not looking for a response. Like, we didn't do this like, oh, look at us. That wasn't our reasoning. But it is really beautiful and healing, honestly, for me, who has been someone who has been incredibly hurt by the church, to know that even though people don't even live here, that they're seeing just our existence and it's healing something in them. We receive so many messages. And in the midst of this last week, the sign being destroyed, I had kind of this conversation with somebody, and they asked such an interesting question. It's the first day of June. It's my favorite day of the year. Can I tell you why? It's Pride Month. It's not my birthday. My birthday's in January. I do love my birthday. But it is the first day of Pride Month. And I just don't think that it's that like shocking to me that the week like leading up, you know, there was tension. Kind of doesn't really surprise me. But somebody asked me, you know, they are a straight, cisgendered individual, and they kind of asked me, not from a place of judgment, but like genuine curiosity, like, why should I care about pride? And I thought that was a fascinating question, and so I'm taking it upon myself to answer that today. Not perfectly, please. But the truth is, you know, how can we hang out our scarlet cord? Well, we can make ourselves safe. And what better month to challenge yourself to do that? So why are we celebrating Pride? Pride is truly, it started as a protest, but it's turned into this celebration. It is celebrating. It is remembering the people that have fought for justice and equality. It's remembering the people that have lost their lives to violence against queer individuals, trans individuals, who have maybe taken their own lives by suicide, have lost a battle to AIDS, or who have been a recipient of such hatred and brutality. Pride is an opportunity for us to pause and honor that. It's an opportunity for us to remember those who have fought for justice, to remember those that have fought to get to where we are today. I'm going to give you guys a short little history lesson. In 1969, I was not born yet, in case you were wondering. In 1969 was when the Stonewall riots happened. It was an iconic moment. And if I say Stonewall riots and you have no idea what I'm talking about, that's okay. That's okay. Maybe write it down, read something. There's a lot of great resources online. But it became a turning point within the community from kind of silently surviving as gay individuals in the world to publicly resisting the hatred that was happening. And then in 1970, which is so cool to me, was the very first Pride March in New York City, exactly 1 year after this whole Stonewall riot. In 1978, the Pride flag was created by a guy named Gilbert Baker. A lot of cool history there. In the 1980s, there was the HIV and AIDS crisis that swept throughout so many communities. In 1999, Bill Clinton, he enacted the very first official Pride Month. That was only 26 years ago. And then in 2004, Massachusetts became the first state to legalize same-sex marriage. In 2004. And then we know in 2015, the U.S. Supreme Court legalized same-sex marriage nationwide. 10 years ago. There's a lot in all of that. There's a reason why there is this month that exists to remember. But I just don't want us to forget that as we go into our lives, as we leave this space, that there are still 575 anti-LGBTQ laws that are trying to be enacted in states all across the U.S. There's currently 54 anti-LGBTQ laws that are currently enacted against the trans community. One state recently just made it illegal for government offices to even have pride flags shown. So I just say this as we kind of wrap up here. If you find yourself a straight, cis ally, make it known. Make it known to LGBTQ plus people that they are safe around you. Make it known not just through silence, but through words and actions. I don't know if you guys see, but Ryan wears this pin sometimes, every day, not sometimes. It's a pin all the time. He'd be happy to share the link on where he got it, but it is a pride pin that basically says, you are safe with me. You are safe here. Because he recognizes the privilege and the way in which he stands and he wants people to know, hey, you're safe with me. And I don't know what that looks like for you, but if you're here, there must be something in you that is willing to interact with that. So how does this make me better? How does this make the world a better place? Just like Rahab's home became a place of refuge for those that were so considered different, may you make your homes and your places that you are a place of refuge, because it's honestly a lot rarer to find than you might think. Every time you choose to include someone, the world excludes. You interrupt systems of shame, silence, and injustice, and you become part of healing a generational hurt. You guys get to participate. We all get to participate in that. It's so much more than just a sign out front. It's something we can do in our every single day, our normal lives, that we can put out our scarlet cord and we can heal the hurt of people. So what is God inviting you today? Maybe it's just to take initiative to educate yourself. Read a book, listen to a podcast, pick a topic of somebody that, a context of something that is different than you. Maybe it's not the queer community. Yeah, it's Pride Month, there's a lot of celebration, but whatever that might be for you, educate yourself. Maybe it's making the place that you exist explicitly safe. How can you do that? How can you show the world around you that they are safe with you? You know, we don't always need like a huge platform to save the world. It's really just a willingness to show up in our everyday normal life. And so as we go into communion, as we go into this time of reflection and communion, as we sing this song, all creatures of our God and King, I want you to remember that all means all. All means Rahab, all means the LGBTQIA plus community, all means everyone. All are welcome, all are created in the divine image. All are deserving of love and praise. Difference means all. And so on your tables, you'll find some juice and some gluten-free crackers. There's some tables set up front here as well. And I hope that you can take this time to reflect within yourself, to see how you can put out your scarlet cord to show people that all creatures of our God and King are safe and welcome with you. Christ's body broken for you and the blood of Christ shed for you.